Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to APU Industry Career Live webinar session. My name is Colin from Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, and I'm your host for this session. Today is our third day of the webinars. For those who have missed out the previous session, feel free to watch a replay at our YouTube channel. Our webinar series cover in the field of AI and big data, cybersecurity, engineering, psychology, graphic design, digital marketing, and many more. We also have the upcoming session later for actuarial study and games development. While waiting for more people to join our live session today, I'd like to invite you all to come and join our APU Open Day. Our counselors are ready to guide you through all the pathway available for your study after your SPM or IGCSE or UEC. For more information and updates, please do refer to our website and also follow our Facebook page. So today we are proud to have Mr. Faisal from Ministry of SR, and also Mr. Jacob, who is from our School of Computing, again with us to tell you more about the future of augmented and virtual reality in the terms of VR, AR, MR, and also SR. So welcome Mr. Faisal and also Mr. Jacob.
Thank you, Colin. Good afternoon, everyone. As introduced, I am Jacob. I'm one of the lecturers working with Asia Pacific University. So let me introduce to you our honorable guest today, Mr. Faisal. Let me give you a little bit of his background before I pass the time to him. All right, Mr. Faisal Attar bin Muhammad Fadzil, or more commonly known as Faisal, has always been passionate in the extended reality, or in short, we call it XR field. Having graduated in virtual reality back in 2027, his passion for virtual reality led him to pursue a career which allows his creativity to flourish into a future of spatial computing. He has been involving himself on various XR projects such as E-Warisan, which brings ancient Malaysian architecture to life. Other than that, a VR property experience application, and he is also lecturing VR as an assistant lecturer. Currently, he is working as a lead XR engineer at Ministry XR, one of our industrial partners with APU, supervising VR and MR projects and aiding other XR-related projects. So without further ado, I would like to pass the time to Faisal. Faisal, please take over from here.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, you guys can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, so my name is Faisal Athar. I'll be the speaker for today. We're going to talk about the future of augmented and virtual reality. Is my slide being shared right now? Okay, thanks. So basically, we're just gonna talk about what's the future of augmented and virtual reality and what you guys need to know about what's XR, what's AR, what's VR and MR. Kind of like we understand these terms have been going around. Some of you might have heard of them, some of you might have been researching about it, but some of you might have no idea what the hell these things are, basically, because there's just basically just acronyms and whatnot. So today I'm just going to share with you guys what these acronyms are, what they stand for, and what will be the future for it. As for you guys looking into your future, the things that you guys are going to be embarking with in this particular journey, you have to make your choices really quick at a very early on, and you have to make sure that you are like well informed about what your choices would be. So let's talk about the future of augmented virtual reality. So today we're going to talk about what is AR, VR, MR, or even XR, the current trends of XR in the industry, and the future of XR. So we'll just gonna spend a bit more time on these things. So just a bit about myself before we move on. My full name is Faisal Athar bin Muhammad Fazil. As I was being introduced before, I am a lead XR engineer, but more nowadays I play more of a creative technical producer role. I basically just oversee most projects, and we have our own engineers doing the main engineering development and creative. I'm also an XR masterclass trainer. I do training for XR masterclass, basically within this particular field, and I'm a certified HRDF trainer as well. I have 2 fat cats, and I'm a prominent New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW wrestling fan. That's basically what I do outside of work. And that's basically just a picture of me developing on the HoloLens. I think last year or last 2 years. What year is it? 2021. Okay, it was like about a year ago when we did a project using the HoloLens at APU. So if you are coming into APU, you can come over to the XR studio, and hopefully you guys gonna try out really, really wonderful and awesome stuff over there. So first and foremost, before we go into the future, we want to understand what is actually AR, VR, MR, and XR. First and foremost, we need to understand what these things are first and foremost, so that you know and what is the current stage of this, and what's the future holds for them and for you guys, basically. So XR, I'll start off with the XR first. Why? Because XR, extended reality, is basically the umbrella term for all of these 3 mediums, basically. It's basically augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, all fall under the same umbrella, which is extended reality. So not to confuse with the iPhone XR. So you have to understand that when the iPhone XR came about, it made our jobs a bit complex, because like everybody was searching. We wanted to search, like Google search XR, and they found the iPhone. So it's like, okay, but whatever. But basically the whole term of it is basically under this whole umbrella term of extended reality. So whenever somebody talks about the realm of XR, we're talking about it's either these 3 or a mixture of it. So it can be augmented reality, it can be virtual reality, it can be mixed reality. So it's basically if it's a mixture of it, anything that basically extends the realm of physical reality, that's basically extended reality. So that's why at our company, Ministry XR, we call it like that, because we do not focus specifically on any of these mediums per se, but rather we have specialties on all of them. And then we go even beyond XR, because XR in itself is merely a platform, is basically just a medium of how you consume information, and basically it's a way of communicating. That's basically it of what these are. It's just basically either you drew it from a headset, from a mobile or a device and whatnot. It's a different method of how you would view and consume knowledge and information basically. So that is basically XR, extended reality. So VR, virtual reality, is something I feel like um, is quite straightforward. It's basically you are in a total different realm. You are immersed in a virtual realm that is not your physical world at all. Basically, if you're not seeing the world in itself, you're not seeing what you are physically seeing currently. That's basically virtual reality altogether. Anything that brings you into a different world or a different realm is basically virtual reality. Because VR is basically, it is like it is, it's immerse people into a completely virtual environment. It's a technology by which computer aided and computer objects basically create this immersive illusion of being somewhere else. So that's the whole idea of like, if you are being transported in a different realm, in a different environment, in a different world, that's basically virtual reality. So the idea is basically you want to bring somebody out, you want to escape the physical world. That's basically it. It's basically why people play games, watch movies, they read books. It is a form of escapism. You basically delve into a different world, and virtual reality, it just gives that level of immersion. It's another level of immersion. You're literally seeing that you are in this particular new world. You can basically enhance that by audio, by sense of touch that you can feel with haptics, and basically vibration control. So all of that is basically enhanced and basically helps towards feeling immersed in a virtual realm. So that is basically virtual reality. I think it's basically quite straightforward as well. I feel like a lot of people probably have tried out some VR arcades, such as like the Rift at Mid Valley, or even like VR labs, experience center all across Malaysia, or even if you've tried, somebody probably had bought the HTC Vive or an Oculus Quest. So you might have tried out virtual reality because it's kind of like a very easy experience to kind of like get into. It's very straightforward to understand, where you basically don't have to kind of like really explain much about what virtual reality is. And right now, the main players are basically the HTC and the Oculus, basically with their Oculus Quest devices. The ways you can experience VR are through basically VR headsets like the Oculus Vive or the Oculus Quest and HTC Vive and whatnot. There are ways you can experience on a mobile, which is basically like the Google Cardboard. And then there's also web VR, which is basically, it's a new thing where you experience VR without even like downloading an application and what at all. It's basically, imagine if you just like open up your browser and you can experience VR. That is where the reality right now. We are already in that particular stage where you don't really need to download anything at all. Basically, just apart from your browser, it works on Chrome, Firefox, or like the mainstream browsers nowadays. So basically, that's basically it. It's just basically getting consumers a lot easier access to VR as of today. So these are basically some of the VR ways of VR mediums you can experience. Augmented reality now, AR, is basically you are augmenting things on top of the physical world. So you are basically enhancing the real world with virtual content. So it creates an overlay of virtual content, but you cannot directly interact with the environment. So you can still see the virtual world, and it's basically super enhanced and superimposed with CG or extracted real world sensory inputs such as sound, video, and whatnot. Similar like you play Pokemon Go and whatnot. And this is basically that particular GIF is an example of one of our works that we did for Pizza Hut, which is we augment the Pizza Hut menu. So this was done in Sunway Pyramid concept store about a few years ago, I think 2016, 2017. So it had basically the whole problem statement was they wanted to have the customers to learn more about Pizza Hut menu, because they had issues about people coming over and then ordering Metasaurus, which is a Domino's pizza menu. So they want people to really get to know Pizza Hut menu. So they approached us and we proposed to augment the menu itself and then have them basically explore the menu in a new and fun way. So it was a really interesting project what we did. In the previous VR, the previous slides I showed, which is basically what we did with Subaru VR showroom, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just going to go backtrack a bit. So that particular GIF is basically a Subaru VR showroom where we created a virtual showroom for Subaru Forester and the XV. So that is basically, apart from entertainment and whatnot, virtual reality has been used in basically a marketing way to just get basically have people to showcase their works and their products within virtual reality within the confines of a limited space. So that is basically something you can think about basically to add in how you can use virtual reality. Even augmented reality, because apart from virtual reality, because you need a setup, you need a headset and whatnot. Augmented reality, it requires a bit less than that because it can use your mobile phones, your tablets. There is talks about some AR glasses coming over in probably within a year or two, or even closer than that. Who knows? We know that Apple is like highly hyping up about that. Even like some other companies are basically creating their own AR glasses so that people basically just wear the device on their head, so it becomes a wearable. So it becomes, you do not hindered by kind of like holding a phone and whatnot, holding something on your hand. So that is basically the future. Basically, you don't really need to kind of like hold things on your hand. You can free your hands and basically just everything is on a wearable, which is on your head. So that's basically, it's a lot easier to access, a lot easier to basically experience. And they also have web AR as well, which is basically you don't really need to download applications anymore. You just basically click from a link and then boom, the browser access your camera and opens up augmented reality in your living room directly. So that's basically, it's already right now, and who knows what's going to be the future for that coming up. Basically imagine like the whole world is basically riddled with augmented promos or augmented information, so that you get more informative decisions every time you go out there, go to work or go for like a picnic or whatnot. So these are basically some of the mediums that people are using, and AR, I feel like there's something as a lot more widespread to it, because it's a lot easier, because you don't really need much investment to it, obviously, because it just relies on the phone and basically boom, you can already experience AR. So that's basically the main difference between AR and VR. Mixed reality, however, it's something new and it's something a bit complex, because it requires a specific technology per se, and usually requires a specific hardware as well. Even though a lot of like mobile devices nowadays have that mixed reality capability, but because it's basically a medium consisting of immersive computer generated environments in which elements of physical and virtual environment are combined, basically. So imagine how I would use as a comparison is basically when the first time you play Pokemon Go, many years back then, you can actually augment your Pokemon on top of the real world, but it's not actually detecting the surface. It's not detecting the walls. It's not detecting the floor and whatnot. But now Pokemon Go has gone so far, and that basically you can place your Pikachu on top of a table and it would detect that particular table. That is basically SLAM. It's called basically surface level area mapping. So it detects your surfaces. So that when it has that, it becomes mixed reality. And then it becomes, you are mixing your augmented content on top of the physical world. Now basically becomes mixed reality. So that's why I say like it not necessarily requires a particular hardset, but not all mobile devices have that particular function, and not all applications are basically have that in mind. Basically, just try to merge your physical world and the real world. So in this particular GIF, which is basically the edX, the education experience that we built for XR Studio in APU as well. So that is basically you are truly immersed within the floating augmented virtual objects and elements, while it has detection of actual surface placement, actual spatial anchor. So it's that, and it has gesture controls and whatnot. So it gives that more immersiveness, that next level immersiveness. So that is basically mixed reality, and it's a lot more prominently used within the industry for training and whatnot. And like I said, MR mediums are usually using mixed reality devices and mobile phones. Those two devices right now is basically the HoloLens 2 and the Unreal is currently among the top devices that are being used nowadays for mixed reality. There are other players such as Magic Leap and others, but basically a lot of people are still kind of like try testing the waters really regarding mixed reality, because mixed reality is a bit of a high investment because of the high technology within those particular devices. So these are basically now we understand, I hope basically from that brief understanding, we understand what is augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and extended reality. So right now I'm just going to use the term XR for basically referring to all of it basically. So what are the current trends of XR? There's a lot of trends around using XR. There's a lot more than the things that I've listed over here, which is like LiDAR, gesture recognition, voice recognition, web AR, web VR, and even analytics. So what are these basically? I think some of you might have heard of LiDAR since the newer launches of iPhone, which is light detection and ranging. So this is basically this is where AR has become mixed reality. So mixed reality in its sense is technically AR, but with physical surface recognition, basically, which is in this case of just AR per se, does not necessarily have to have that recognition or detection of surfaces. So when it has that detection and it can accurately detect the floor, in this case it using the LiDAR technology, that it becomes mixed reality, which we feel like it's going to be more prominent in a lot more devices, so that we can do a lot more things, like in this particular experience where you are picturing simulating a furniture within your own home. So imagine if you are, before you're purchasing any furniture, you can visually see there in your physical home, and you can directly have a sense of how big it is, how small it is, does it fit there, does it fit there, does it work with the colors of my room, does it all of those questions basically you can have basically answer with the use of XR. Basically that's the whole point. Instead of just like flipping through catalogs, or you like scrolling to Lazada and just like measuring how big is 120 centimeter, and like I need to find my measuring tape and whatnot. So there's a lot more process to it. So now with the use of XR, you're kind of like skipping all of that and basically just get to the decision making a lot quicker. So that's basically the whole point of XR. Apart from LiDAR, there's also gesture recognition, which I've shown it is more prominent within mixed reality devices or experiences, where you can detect your gestures. This is basically a video of how Oculus is already have hand tracking within their Oculus Quest. So there are certain experiences you don't need a controller anymore. So you can literally see your finger in virtual reality. So trust me, if you try virtual reality, and virtual reality in itself is a really mind-boggling experience, to really see your hands, like your physical hands in virtual reality, is a whole different world in itself. You would be really mesmerized on how you would see your physical thing, like the ones you know already, but in the virtual world. So there are a lot of developers are trying to really work on what you can do with these kind of gesture recognition, and basically try to do ASL within virtual reality, and because it has all algorithms and computer vision to detect these and translate it into other information and data. So that is basically under gesture recognition. Apart from gestures, there's also voice slash speech recognition. There's basically like the HoloLens. If you see a lot of like these devices, because they're standalone devices, they don't really have any controllers and whatnot. You can use your hands, but you can also use your voice to basically just command things. Basically, just like your Google assistants or Siri and whatnot, even Amazon Echo and all of these stuff. But to have all of it on your wearables, it just basically gives a whole next step of a level of interaction. Basically, just skips the whole process of just physically having to touch something and just basically just shout out your instructions of like, hey, turn up the volume, or like minimize this window, close this window, open up this particular application. That is basically what the HoloLens can already do. And a lot of developers are really going further into that, and how you can work better using all of these different interactions. Web AR, web VR. We talked about how I've shown you how basically within the AR and VR as well, how we can already experience these things within the web. And this is basically just to show how powerful now our devices and the browser, to be honest, that it can already support all of these really awesome experience, even though it still comes with the limitations because it is still relying on the mobile browser, and it's relying on internet full-heartedly. So the experiences is very limited, is very simplistic, but for some uh, types of experiences, that is basically what is all you need. You don't necessarily need full-fledged immersion to it, just to get a message across. So sometimes this is an avenue as well. Analytics. Now, analytics is something is a really important part of data as well, part of XR. Why? Because like it detects your data while you're using it, and then it uses this data to basically enhance that particular experience. As this mainly used for trainings and whatnot. So with the information, they know what you're looking at, what you're interacting with. They would have had an understanding of what kind of trainee are you, what level of skills that you are in currently, and then basically can adjust automatically using that particular data, and then they'll basically use that instead of like asking you in a survey or like getting your feedback after the experience. They would get your experience to understand your data, your feedback directly into that while you're doing the experience. So that is basically a lot really interesting thing as well to be used within the XR realm. As we can see, like who uses XR, we know that there's games, there's animations and whatnot, but who basically mainly uses XR? So from a business perspective, you can see on the graph there, the top graph basically talks about like from an ABI research back in 2020 and 2019, the top the top field that mainly using XR is the medical industry, because the medical industry really utilizes AR and VR for training purposes, or even like basically streamlining surgery, remote surgery within their practices. I was gonna show you some examples as well, how they're basically doing a video conference. Imagine you're doing your Teams or Zoom calls and whatnot, but the Zoom meeting is basically just floating in the air, and you're not even holding a phone, or it's not interrupting your browser window where you can just focus on what you're doing. Your friend or your colleague or your lecturer is basically on the side, on the wall, on the air. Basically, that's like the whole point of it. So you can have all of this really cool information everywhere that you see, and you're not interrupted by holding all of this, and your hands can freely do what they're supposed to do. This is why medical, manufacturing, military, industrial, all of this is basically the top ones that are actively using XR in their business model. So these guys are using XR in their work. They're part of their development pipeline. Whereas on the consumer aspect, consumers are more keen towards gaming and obviously movies and television. And then there are medicals, retail, and for tourism as well. But it's not as much as people are on the entertainment sector, because consumers usually they want to consume, or for obvious reasons. So XR really provides that next level entertainment where you can go to virtual concerts, you can have a virtual gathering within Red Dead Redemption. You can have a virtual gathering without VR chat. There's Zepeto. There's a whole bunch of like online community that's revolving around XR. Like I mentioned, Pokemon Go as well. So that's basically why the gaming industry for XR is really, really the booming industry, the main industry for XR, targeting the consumer level. So there is basically on that. So that is basically the current trend. Let's go talk about like specifics. Now we're going to go in just a bit of specifics what XR is being used within the industry. So in the industry have been using XR quite some time, and a lot of fields, like I mentioned, like entertainment and gaming, employees and consumers, healthcare, real estate, or even marketing. There's even more from this, but this is basically just like some of the main players. So I talked about Pokemon Go a few times, I think, because this is basically the main thing people used for AR, and it's a lot easier to understand, and it just makes sense in a Pokemon world way, basically, because it is a mainstream exposure of XR. This is why people go for entertainment and gaming. And there's also VR, like the Half-Life Alex is basically a major breakthrough within the virtual world. How it uses the Valve Index to really utilizes the hand gestures, the controllers, the NECA controllers, to bring that next level of immersion as well. And down there is basically a mixed reality experience of the Angry Birds game. So you imagine playing Angry Birds, but not limited on a 2D screen, but now it's basically literally in your living room, where you can walk around the obstacle and then like really choose where you want to shoot from. So that just gives a whole different experience altogether. So you imagine like there's a whole bunch of people are out there are really actively researching on these parts, and then like coming up with newer ways to experience the games or the entertainment that we have fallen in love with, but in a new light, in a new method, in a new experience, a new reality. That's the whole point of XR. So on the other side, which is not so entertainment based, which is for the employees and consumers, AR or VR has been being used for skills transfer. You imagine basically, imagine if you're trying to learn on how to change a motor oil and whatnot, but instead of watching videos and whatnot, instead of reading a book, you have an AR device, either you hold or you're wearing it, and it augments information directly when you see the engine. It would detect the engine, it would detect where everything is supposed to go, and you directly adjust it with your hands. You don't really have to like hold anything and whatnot. So that's basically the whole idea of it. And virtual onboarding has been going around as well. How like Walmart in the US, they actually use VR to train their employees to kind of like have an understanding of how busy a Black Friday sale would be within a virtual reality. So instead of just like putting you down in the fire directly, you will have a virtual simulation of what that experience would be before you are actually going through the actual process. So that's basically virtual onboarding. And virtual collaboration, and like now basically within the times that we live in, we are limited with physical transportation. We do not have that luxury to tour around, go other places and whatnot. So virtual collaboration is something that is really on the rise right now, and people are actively finding newer ways to collaborate remotely instead of just on a con call and whatnot, because you are lacking that presence. Basically, that's the whole idea of having somebody physically there versus seeing their face on a screen. So you might be there, but there is some sort of like distance you feel. So this is basically where virtual worlds helps in just giving you that sense of presence. So it increases productivity within the using of this. Healthcare, like we mentioned before, how medical has been like the prominent user for XR, saving lives within the XR, basically using mixed reality within surgery, and like that particular image in the middle, so mixed reality remote calling. So you can basically call specialists from the other side of the world while you're doing surgery, while your hands are actively doing surgery. Why these surgeons require it? Because they have to do their work and they cannot be affording to hold something in their hands. So they have to basically have a wearable device such as the HoloLens, so they can basically augment information and get calling with some other team and whatnot, and then like enhance the information they have of the patients in front of them. So you have all of this information to get the decision making a lot quicker, and you save lives a lot faster. Even in the US, there is this particular app called HoloPatient where it trains doctors on how to deal with COVID-19 patients within a virtual and within a mixed reality realm. So in this case, basically you are seeing virtual patients in front of you and you have understanding of what information they have, and then you know what the steps you're supposed to take before you are directly handling an actual patient. So you imagine that that you can have all of this before you are going into it, so that you would have a lot more preparation when you are in the real world. That's the whole point of training using XR. Real estate has been another prominent factor within the XR realm. A lot of people are using VR to view property. So you imagine if you before you're buying a house and whatnot, what if you can see the house in a virtual realm? You can literally see where everything is. They say that, oh, I can see KLCC from this view, but really, yeah. So you can have virtual representation of what it actually is. It's basically like what we did. Well, I did a few years back for a company called VR Lab, which basically called VProp Touch. It's basically an online experience where a lot of people can come together and virtually view the property without even having the property being built yet. Like UEM Sunrise, they actually launched their property without a physical showroom. They only relied on this virtual showroom, which we built. So imagine that you have all of that information before you don't have to go there. So you can make a lot more decision making a lot quicker, and you can buy property a lot easier. And a lot of property, they have the budget to build this kind of scale of property of experiences. So in compared to other agencies and whatnot. Marketing is something that's a lot within Malaysia. Even like around the world, a lot of people are really utilizing XR to get their brand across, because they know right now brand awareness is basically everything. You want people to really know about your brand, and people are spending more time on their phones and whatnot. So people are using these XR campaigns for AR try-ons. Like Gucci basically created an AR try-on on their app. You can basically scan your feet. It would augment the Gucci sneakers on the feet directly. So you can literally see how it looks like on your feet before you physically buy it. Imagine if you can do that on Lazada, you would buy a lot of things without having the problem of like, oh, will this fit? Will this not fit? Will this okay? Will this mix with my pants? Will this mix with everything? So a lot of these luxury brands, they are going towards this. Even us, we're basically going towards XR retail in the future as well. So that's basically the future we're in a world where you physically are not able to try on a lot of things, right? Like nowadays, if you go to brand's outlet or whatnot, you cannot try on the clothes because of COVID and whatnot. So you have a virtual mirror, virtual try-on that will basically helps in decision making. That's a whole different world. So this is basically how people are really utilizing XR. So now talking about the future of XR, where do we go from here? Now we know that everybody's basically using XR everywhere in one way or short of form. And from a 2019 research, they show that basically the XR business is expected to grow by more than 209 billion US dollars by the year 2022, which is just next year. Imagine within this range of 4 years, it just has that a more near 200 billion dollar growth. So imagine how that is going to be by the time you guys are going to graduate. You guys, for SPM leavers or like other students who are really already embarking into this particular journey of XR, the world is already there for you to conquer. Basically, there will be more businesses that's targeting XR. So it depend. That doesn't matter what kind of field that you are. You're gonna be in the creative, engineering, administration, management, law, and whatnot. Everybody is gonna basically one way or another will be using XR. That's a given fact. And like we mentioned as well, AR remote expertise and training applications to have almost 60 million active users by 2025. This is a research done by last year. And a lot of people are in demand to basically create remote expertise training, because you want to train people as quick as possible because people need work. You want to evolve people to get work as quick as possible, and you want to get people to be informed as quick as possible. So these training applications are something, is a very helpful way to speed up the process and increase productivity, because research has shown training within AR or VR helps increases their particular learning understanding by a high percentage, basically. So we can see that number even growing in the next few years. Number of VR startups has increased by 14% in the less than a year. This is one recent research in this year. Even with the people they know the current situations. You don't know how it's going to be like in the next future. Will there be another lockdown? Will there be another virus or whatnot? Who knows? So people are already investing in these new technologies. People are creating new solutions, especially remote virtual reality solutions. So basically, you want to add more content into it and then solve a lot more problems using VR and whatnot. COVID-19 as well. Talking about the currency, we cannot run away from what's currently happening right now, and because of current social distancing and remote workforce, and it will accelerate growth in immersive XR collaborations, revenue to over 400 million US dollars by the year 2025. This is last year's research. This is what I meant. Basically, people are going into virtual conferences, virtual collaborations. People are working online, but not just like on a video call, but you literally see physical representations of your co-workers. You have your avatar, they have their avatar, and you can work together as if you're in the office together, but without physically having to be together. So we are already going towards that. And you imagine by the time you guys are going to be studying in APU, or you guys are going to be graduating from APU and whatnot, that will be the future for you guys. So why not go into it right now, where you are in the cusp of evolution of humankind? That's basically it. People are already using games to kind of like get together, just like how there was a news report about how office workers are discussing meetings in Red Dead Online. So that is already something as well. So finally, I want to leave you guys with this particular quote by Hideo Kojima, which is 90% of what is considered impossible is in fact possible. The other 10% will become possible with the passage of time and technology. And this was said by Hideo Kojima, which is the creator of Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding. Even though like there's mixed reactions to Death Stranding, but that is basically the whole idea. His vision, what he wanted to do was impossible. Even like during the times of Metal Gear Solid, what he wanted to do he wanted to create an action-based sneaking game. So at the time, that was deemed impossible. It doesn't make sense, but he made it to make sense. And he made it into a global phenomenon, into what it is right now, and where there's a lot other people are following with that particular footsteps. So in terms of XR as well, the future is limitless. There are people out there, there's a lot of problems that we can solve with XR, with the coming of technology. And I'm assuming that you guys who are coming up, the younger minds than mine, would have a lot more exposure, would have a lot more ideas, a lot more experimentations that you would guys want to try out. Like, what if I can do this? What if I can do that? What if I can cook in virtual reality? What if I can smell? What if I can transfer smell through augmented reality? That is an actual research, by the way. And there's a lot of things that you never know. That is basically, you would think like, I can, that doesn't make sense. That cannot be done. It might be able to be done. It's something that's, you never know. That's the wonderful thing about XR. And so I think that covers the cover of my talk basically. So thank you. I hope you learned something new about that. Feel free to basically, if you have like any additional questions, you can email me on faisata@ministryxr.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. I even have like an article I wrote down on LinkedIn as well, which is getting into the XR industry. If you are kind of interested of how you want to get into the XR industry, regardless of where you are in life, you're coming into studies or you are already after your studies and whatnot. That's basically just a brief guide of how you want to get into the XR industry. And I share with you my two fat cats image as well. And so jazakumullah khairan, and thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you for your very informative yet very straightforward presentation and sharing session. I think we are now open to Q&A, question and answer session. Our audience, if you have any questions about VR, AR, XR, the future trend, the real world examples or applications or anything which Mr. Faisal did share with us earlier on, please put your questions and we will entertain your questions shortly. And perhaps, Faisal, let me start with a question while letting our audience to prepare their questions. From your sharing earlier on, it seems like as the technology advances, virtual content, because you mentioned about the avatar, those virtual objects or virtual content in general, that were previously exist in the virtual world, that is what we call VR in the virtual reality, has not been, which was not available in the physical world is now available. And when it is available in the actual world, the real world, and we call it augmented reality, AR, isn't it? And then as this AR technology is continuously improved and explored by detecting the real world environment, you did mention to us about detecting the surface so that some objects or Pikachu can be put on a table, for example. It evolves into mixed reality, MR. So it sounds to me like MR is more promising as compared to the other two. What do you think about it?
I agree as well. It's basically because but it has its own usage, to be honest. Like all three has its own place. Not like any one of it is gonna be like outmatched by the other, because like augmented reality, it's only usage basically if you are just augmented information. Let's say if you go to a public transport, like let's go to MRT or LRT, and you see this train. I have no idea where this train is going. So I just want to know where this train is going. I need to Google, or like I need to type in the train, and when I miss the train, I cannot see. So if you have like an AR application, you just pop up the phone and then just scan the train, or like the front of the train or the side of the train, and then you have, by having the marker already there, you tracked it, and then it would just augment the whole the line of the pathway of the particular train. So that is basically where AR comes in as a lot easier for that particular purpose. Whereas MR is basically if you are going for engineering, how construction workers like Trimble and even Boeing, they usually do basically when they are going for maintenance, when they open up the engines and whatnot, they are wearing their mixed reality device. They have all this information augmented, and it detects whatever they're seeing. So it detects this wire, it detects this engine, it detects this particular surface, and using that particular surface, it showcases the, okay, you're supposed to do this, okay, this thing goes over here, this thing goes here. So that's basically where mixed reality helps, because you need your hands to actually fix the thing, so you're not holding anything to interrupt it. So that is basically where mixed reality comes in. Whereas virtual reality is something of a experience where you want them to be totally immersed into that particular world, where you want to bring them to the moon, you want to bring them to Mars, you want to bring them to a volcano or whatnot, you want to bring them to somewhere dangerous, something that's not physically available, something that's already extinct. You want to stand toe to toe with a mammoth or a T-Rex or your version of the dinosaurs, or you want to stand on top of the Mars rover curiosity basically. That is basically where VR comes in. That's like the one of the main point of VR. You want to bring your users somewhere that you can't do within a virtual, in a physical realm. So that's where VR sits. That's why a lot of gaming and entertainment are going towards, even tourism that's going towards VR, whereas MR and AR are more towards something more practical, or something more constructive, more something that's got to do that you are actually doing something, whereas not just having fun. So all of it basically has its own place depending on the usage and purposes.
All right, thank you, Faisal.
And yes, we have more questions coming up. So, yep, we have a question from Tiffany. So, any view about the future career prospects for VR, AR, MR, or SR in education industry?
Okay, so yes, basically, because like the education sector has been a lot. There are people are going into deep understanding about what XR is, like AR and whatnot. But you imagine how classrooms would evolve, like you have like mixed reality devices or virtual reality devices. Imagine if you can travel to history, travel to certain aspects of geography using virtual reality, instead of just like watching a video, instead of watching uh, films or presentation slides. Imagine if you can literally wear a headset and literally be in the Roman Colosseum while it's being built. That just gives a whole different experience, and you would learn from it. Why I know is this, because if any of you have played Assassin's Creed, you can literally map out the whole map of the Roman Colosseum just by playing Assassin's Creed 2. That's in the entertainment world 3D within the browser. Imagine like if you can literally wear it on your head and you literally feel that you are inside of it. So that just gives a whole different experience, where the education process just gives a whole next level, and you would really learn these things because you live it. So even like chemistry, medical science and whatnot, they utilize VR as well, where you can try out like different chemicals, because like in this particular field, there are certain substances that might be dangerous, might be not you're not able to access it, or it's in limited number of it. But if you can recreate these things within the virtual realm, or in an AR or in an XR, then you can have all of your students to try it out. Everybody would have an experience to try these things out before they actually go out to the world. So they have prior knowledge, even though it is virtual reality knowledge, but that is level some sort of experience as well, compared to what you study, just memorizing ABC or memorizing what the textbooks tells you. You are literally doing it. So in the education industry, it is something booming aspect as well, because there's a lot of educators and academicians. They are trying to get newer ways of teaching their students. Even in APU at the XR studio, we have the edX, the education experience. We have the holographic glass as well. So you imagine if you can have, if you're into engineering or into architecture, you can have the like floor plan architecture augmented in front of you, and you can have like the lecturers, the students, everybody using their phones or using their own device can walk around the set augmented reality, and you can really go understand better on the architecture. You can go here, you can understand why it's designed like this, or this is this different material. What if we add in like the wind turbulence and whatnot, what would happen? So you have that teaching and learning experience in a new way, instead of just like a passive experience where you just like sit down and listen to whatever your lecturer is babbling and whatnot. But now you are part of it and you are literally seeing it in front of you, and it's whole different experience. So yes, there is a whole lot of future prospect within the education industry, because like I said, technically the future is limitless towards it, regardless of whatever field that you are going into.
Yes, I agree on that. I can foresee those primary students, even for secondary students, when they're attending their Sejarah class or even chemistry class in the future, they might be very interactive learning experience comparing to my time.
Right.
So
It's not even like that far in the future as well, because there are certain schools like in China or in certain parts of Europe, there are already students that are actively using VR and AR in their class. I think in Singapore, they're going into that direction as well. So it's just gonna get better and just gonna get mainstream, and sooner or later our brothers and sisters or even our childrens will be in these kind of schools that will be, they would, what is a textbook? They will be literally learning more from their devices, and so who knows.
yep, I agree on that. So, yes, we have next question from Ram. A Malaysian company adopting SR. Has the pandemic fast forward SR into the business?
Okay, so that is a good question as well. So Malaysian companies, I think like there are a few that's basically rising numbers of companies that are adopting XR. People are understanding the usefulness, the effectiveness, how XR is actually gaining speed on basically that communicating, because like companies like Maxis, companies like Digi, or even TM and whatnot, they're really showcasing what's the potentials of XR to be used within the work that they do, not just on the on advertising or campaigns. So I think like all of these companies, they usually use XR as a marketing campaign, but there are certain companies that are actively showcasing how life can be with XR. And so especially with the pandemic, people are beginning to see they because the future is some for some is very uncertain. So XR is something to be looked upon, and basically there's a lot of people are beginning to see that, and they're gonna like adapt. They are adapting, and people are who are not adapting, they are figuring out like, why am I struggling, why isn't this working anymore? Like, how can I progress within this trying times and uncertain times? So XR basically, especially now with the web AR, web VR, anything that has to do with mobile, you can literally be in a different place. You can literally learn things from your mobile, not just from YouTube, but basically be physically, literally being there where you see yourself in somewhere in a different environment, just to have a different experience. Imagine like there are certain experiences on the Oculus store, if I'm mistaken, like how does the blind experience the world? There is the VR experience of that. So you imagine storytellers like filmmakers, music video directors, they have to kind of like consider these kind of experiences. Because like not everybody is going to be able to go out there to do production like a normal typical. So everybody has to do remote now. Everybody has to do remote collaboration, remote workforce, and virtual teleconferencing and whatnot. Even like this kind of experience, like this seminar, by right, usually we would be on the same stage and we would have people in front of us, like just like chatting or like raise up their hands. Imagine if this was a virtual experience. Like I can see, I have an avatar, you have an avatar. We would literally be sitting together. We can take pictures and whatnot. Why are we doing that as well? People are actually looking into it. Even we are actually looking into that. We are actively working on something, on a like a virtual world experience that has easily access for the masses, so that people can have that sense of presence that people have been lacking with all of this teleconferencing tools right now. So yes, on the hindsight, the pandemic does push forward these kind of technologies faster than it's supposed to be, where people are opening their eyes of the because it's not a novelty anymore. It's something, it has become a necessity, and because there is a demand for it now, because of these things. So yes, there are companies that are adopting it, and yes, the pandemic in one way or another does push forward this XR into business as well.
Right, thank you very much. And here comes to our next question from Izmi. How wide is the employment area for graduate in VR era related in Malaysia? Some parents are a bit concerned on the companies or industry as well as the earning. Or it's better for the graduate to have specific focus on certain strengths, as such as knowledge in implementing VR AR towards the gaming industry?
Okay, thanks, Isni. So this is an interesting question as well. Thing is, VR AR has been around in Malaysia for quite some time, to be honest. It has been around because like I graduated in 2007. Back then the market was really scarce. It was really hard for me to find work within the VR realm. So a lot of my classmates, they went on to doing animation and whatnot, and and good for them. But I stayed to try to do animations and whatnot. But finally, I found up doing VR architecture, if I'm not mistaken, or was it heritage? Sorry, virtual heritage. And then now, with the advent of devices, the more devices are becoming less and less expensive. You are seeing HTC Vive in all IT. People can buy the Oculus Quest on Lazada and Shopee and whatnot. So people have access to these devices, even on the mobile. Our phones have been more powerful. We can access AR and VR on the browser. So there is work for graduates graduating from VR AR in Malaysia. There are companies who are actively doing either research, doing marketing campaigns, or doing like corporate industrial based development, basically. Like even like Malaysia, in Singapore, they're actively doing companies for architectural company, for the military, for geology companies. Basically, they're doing simulations. I think even in Malaysia, there was like simulations for military or even the public transport. Would you believe that the Prasarana Rapid KL, they used to have like a VR simulation of the bus, the Rapid KL bus, basically for the bus drivers to actually try it out before they go ride the actual bus. Like one of my interns actually worked on that project back in 2010, 11, I don't recall, but that was back then. So who knows like what's the industry like right now. But I would also, on the other hand, we like to say as well, we would be better if like the government would help more in terms of providing more grants, more research based grants, or more budgets for these kind of projects. Because yes, at this current stage in point in time, even though the devices are becoming more affordable, the cost is still high at the first part. But there are ways we can alleviate those costs by partnering up with academic institutes, or even like other industrial subject matter expert and whatnot. So there are ways of collaborating to make sure that the projects can be done. So there is prospects as well. So is it better to graduate to specific focus on certain strengths and knowledge implementing gaming industry? So on the second part of that question, gaming industry is something to be looked at as well. Malaysia has a strong gaming community as well, like the IGDA, like the commune under MDEC, the Level Up KL. They have a strong following as well for the gaming industry. Um, but for VR, AR into gaming, is something on the rise as well. So considering now is 2021, by the time you guys are graduating, it would already be there. It would be established because people are already establishing that we have the talent, we have the capacity, we have the resources, are talented programmers, there are talented creators, designers, and forward-thinking people who wants to do this. And there are people, companies like industry that demands all of this. They have the demand for VRAR solutions of their problems. And just to bring these two together, by the time you guys are graduating, you would have an open spot in these kind of companies. Even our companies, we are basically the forefront doing all of these campaigns, doing VR showrooms, we are doing virtual events, we are doing augmented reality games, 360 treasure hunts and whatnot. We're doing a lot of really, really awesome stuff. So if you want to join us, you can feel free to leave a message on my email as well. But there are other companies who are actively doing VR AR in Malaysia, and they are rising and they are getting more prominent as well. So there is a future. Obviously, there is a future. If you don't see any companies that you want to be part of, then you start your own company. That's not something of a big problem as well. I think APU kind of like encourages the entrepreneurship from their students to kind of like create their own startup, create their own solution, become their own solution providers, because there's a lot of problems that can be solved in multiple ways that you would never know. And like through all of these new startups to newer people, collaborations and whatnot, we're just trying to make the world a better place. Like that's the whole point of it. So why not start here? Why not do in this particular industry where you know it's gonna be something that is readily available to you, like because like we know like AI, automations, analytics, data, big data, because of these advent of new technologies, there are certain types of roles and jobs that's going to be obsolete. That's a no-brainer. So you want to make sure that your choice of career would be future proof, that you know, while if you have the what it takes to have that forward thinking, that you know that this kind of information can be beneficial to you and for the society, instead of just focusing on your typical, not to say that or graphic design or web development or data. There are certain things that can be enhanced, even like filmmaking. The way they shot Lion King, they use VR to actually produce Lion King for the actors, for the motion capture actors to actually work on. So every fields of work in the world is evolving. So you want to be in that evolution, and if not, you're gonna be basically you're gonna be left behind, and you don't want that.
Yep, agree on that. So we have next questions from Tang. If students are not so confident with creative module, is it possible for them to join this field in AR and VR?
Jacob, you want to take that?
Sure. All right. Okay, let me read the questions. If students are not so confident with creative modules, is it possible for them to join this field? So I suppose this student has certain skills or certain, perhaps I would say, fundamental knowledge about creative stuff. Probably these students are not confident, or he or she is not from that particular stream. So I would say I can only talk from the perspective of VR AR programs offered at APU. Students may consider multimedia technology with this specialism in VR AR to further their study, because in this program it is not only focusing on creating the creative content, let's put it this way, And in fact, at APU, we emphasize quite significantly in terms of the technological usage. Even in multimedia, for example, VR, AR technology, students may not need to create everything by themselves. They can actually use some of the products from their peers. At APU, we do have other creative programs as well in animation, in visual effects, in modeling, and so on. So that is one option. Other than that, we can also see nowadays in any industry, there is a blend of specialists. If this student, for example, he or she is not confident in creating creative modules, so I would suggest if the passion in VR AR is strong, this student can actually polish up his or her skill in programming in such a way that he or she is able to use the existing technology in VR AR to accommodate those creative content in it. And eventually, it is a joint effort between the creative content developer and this VR AR developers to come together and solve a problem with a new way.
All right. Thank you very much.
Can I add to it? I feel I want to add a
Sure.
bit
Yeah.
because like considering like with the things that I've shared for the past hour or so, I came from a creative background, so I came from a gaming background. I've mostly draw and mostly like do animations and whatnot. So that's why my experiences are more on creative. But I taught myself programming and basically learn on how to kind of like develop my own games and my own experience and whatnot. So it's possible you do not have to become like a jack of all trades that you know everything from the creative aspect or a programming aspect. You would better be more specialized on what you can do, what you are more passionate about, more what is your skill is more leaning towards. Like Jacob has shown, for programmers, basically you can focus on the programming, on creating frameworks. The designers will basically be focusing on more on the aesthetic, on the visuals and whatnot. And there will be like other people, because in the real world you will be collaborating with a lot of other people within to create that particular experience. You would have the programmer, the character programmer, you have the animator, you have the 3D artist, you have the UI, UX design as well within the VR XR realm. To become a UX designer, that is still a rarity. And to see if you want to go towards UX within the XR world, that I would applaud you, because like that will be something will be in demand by the time you are going to be graduating. So there are a lot of other people to be combined to create these particular applications. So it doesn't have to be you have to know everything. Just focus on what you are most passionate about and what your skill base. If you're good at selling, good at marketing this well, then fine, go to marketing. If you are go for programming, go for power programming, go into shaders, go into characters, go into solutions, go into creatives. Because I've seen some of the students, they can do that, they can do this, but they can sell. They know the technology enough to sell the things. They can talk. They can really sell the idea. So that is something to have as well. But you need that collaboration in the end. So you need to find good friends, find a team in the end, just to create, because a lot of like the big awesome projects usually is being done in a collaborative environment. So and yeah, that's basically it.
Right. So we have the next questions from Chi Sen. How will the introduction of 5G accelerate the growth of AR/VR industry in Malaysia?
Oh, it will accelerate a lot, because like now, since the advent of basically 5G, VR, AR, web VR, a lot of things have gone online. A lot of things are going streaming based information, streaming based games, streaming based experiences, entertainment and whatnot. You cannot have a good experience without really good internet connection. So 5G will just spearhead that particular connection speed, so you get a lot more information, especially when you're working in the industry. Take for instance like the example I used with the surgery in the medical field. They would require instant information, they would require instant connection, for something that is for like life or death matters. Like if you've seen, um, if any of you watch football in the past few days, the Euros, one of the footballers nearly had a near death experience in the field. And there was a period of time where people would thought that he was a goner, but alhamdulillah for the medics, they actually managed to revive him. Imagine if like those people who are physically there, they are not physically, they do not have all of the information, they do not have all of the knowledge on how to save that man's life. But if you have XR, even if you have a device that you can call, you can conference and whatnot, but if the when you have 5G, you will have that information right there in the snap of a finger, basically, because you have all of that connection everywhere around. So you can have all of the knowledge, you can learn all of these things, and then try to save a life. So that's why I strongly feel 5G would basically accelerate the growth of AR VR, especially in Malaysia specifically, because like we are still in need of a better uh, connection to stream a lot more data across all of our devices and across information centers and the consumers, which is us. So yes, uh, this is basically how, just to name a few of how basically 5G would accelerate the growth. That people would jump into creating more content, streamline content, streaming based content, and basically more problem solving solutions using 5G.
Yep. Okay. And we have another question from Ram again. Is there a local company that can develop SR solution? Are they on par with companies from Silicon Valley?
I think there are. I think I can safely say our company Ministry XR is a company that is it is actively developing XR solutions. We are have constantly being approached by a lot of different industries, from engineering, from medicine, from architecture, from education, even like I think I have another call in the next week with another education institute, how to create a set up a studio and whatnot. So there are these kind of demands, and are they on par with the companies of Silicon Valley? From the looks of it, we are actually. There are a few. I cannot say the other VR AR companies in Malaysia, but I can safely say that we should be part of Silicon Valley as well, if not for the travel restrictions and whatnot. Because if you see the companies in Silicon Valley, they are working on solutions that are more or less similar to us. Basically, they are facing the same problems that we are facing. They are solving problems that we are trying to solve problems for. They are approaching these things the way that we are approaching these things as well. Like a few years ago, when we went to the AWE XR Expo, which is the Augmented World Expo, I think was it somewhere in the US. And our guys, when they talk to other startups and talk with other managers and whatnot, we found that basically we're all on the same boat. Even though we're halfway across the world, we're in this together, and we're basically not that far off actually. That's the thing. It's companies like us where people are not seeing as much. Companies they are not seeing the things that we are doing as much. People still see XR in just for entertainment or child's toy and whatnot. But we as well, we're actively working on things that actually changing lives and changing the world, changing the way we work, changing the way we live. So yes, basically there to answer that question, yes, there is a local company which is Ministry XR. There are other companies as well, as you can find on LinkedIn and whatnot. And yes, they are. I can safely say we are on par with Silicon Valley, if not might be not better with someone.
Okay, thank you. And here's kind of with our last question. I think Jacob can answer for this from Cars Lover. Can I know what is the best specialism I can do in my diploma to continue my degree in VR/AR?
All right, thank you for the question, Carlos. If you would like to take the pathway from diploma to undergraduate study in VR/AR specialism, I would suggest you to take diploma in ICT with a specialism in interactive technology, because we know that in VR/AR, from the sharing by Mr. Faisal earlier on, we see a lot of immersiveness, if you notice the word, or if you reason through the sharing, there are a lot of interactions. So if you would like to venture into this direction as your career from diploma, then I would suggest you to take diploma in ICT with a specialism in interactive technology. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your sharing, Mr. Faisal and also Mr. Jacob. And I believe the time is over now. And we're going to have the next session regarding the actuarial, which is the title of Redefining Actuarial Beyond Traditional Risk Mitigating Discipline at 3:30 p.m. later. So stay tuned and follow our Facebook page for more updates. Once again, time to join our APUE Open Day. And thank you very, very much to Mr. Faisal and also Mr. Jacob. And thank you for everyone to joining with us for this live webinars. All right, take care and goodbye.
Thank you.
See you guys.